In the 9th year of Yongle, in a prosperous era, the country and the people were proud, and the 4 seas came to court. At this moment, ask, who doesn't want to become a high-ranking official? Keywords of the novel. De Guan Ren no pop-ups, De Guan Ren TXT complete collection download, De Guan Ren latest chapter reading. Chapter 1. Day 1. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 1 Day 1. The autumn rain stopped before dawn, and as the roosters crowed outside and the sky turned white, he slowly opened his eyes. These days, he has been immersed in tremendous shock. He found himself transformed into another person, not only in a different way, but also with an unfamiliar memory in his mind. Until today, shock gradually turned numb, and he finally accepted this absurd reality. His soul had returned to 600 years ago, merging with the body of a young man named Wang Xian. Being able to live is fortunate. He let out a light sigh, grateful that he survived the disaster and that he was an orphan without a wife or children to care about. Living anywhere makes no difference with this in mind. He was not dissatisfied with his body, which was as thin as wood and could not even move his fingers. He was pondering how to face his own family when he suddenly heard a creaking sound from outside, followed by an angry voice. This plagued chicken, it's already dawn and still doesn't crow. Sooner or later, I'll stew you. This voice comes from a sharp woman, who is Wang Xian's mother. After training the chickens, she started training the people again and said, if a group of lazy people don't roll out yet, it will be dark if they sleep any longer. Amidst the mother's shouts, Wang Xian's elder brother Wang Gui quickly got dressed and woke up, wiped his face haphazardly, and then went to cook. Where's your wife? The old lady was feeding the chickens with a bamboo basket when she saw her son cooking and immediately pulled down her face. Zuilian. Wang Gui's upper eyelids were thick and his lips were also thick, making him very honest at first glance. In front of the old lady, she looked even more like a mouse seeing a cat. Upon hearing this, she shrunk her neck and said, that discomfort today. 15 days in a month. The old lady snorted and cursed, you're lying to ghosts. Mom, I'm going to fetch water. Wang Gui smiled foolishly and picked up the pole standing in the corner. Me, it sounds so bad. Who did you learn from? The old lady snorted again, finished feeding the chicken, wiped her hands on her apron, grabbed a wooden basin with one arm, and carried a bucket with the other, and walked towards the west wing. Don't forget to instruct Lao Dadao. Before eating, sweep the courtyard. Wang Gui obediently replied. Wang Xian lives in the west wing room. Although he has already woken up, he has not yet figured out how to face this family, especially the angry old lady. He decided to close his eyes and pretend to be unconscious. The door was pushed open heavily, and the old woman with a blue scarf wrapped around her head, carrying a bucket and a basin, walked in with a clattering sound. In fact, this mother is very delicate, with clear black and white eyes, very lively. When not in a fit, she doesn't look like a mother tiger. But when she had a fit, her black and white eyes became cold and dazzling, sharp and pressing. A sharp mouth can even make a living person feel angry and then come back to life. After entering the room, she looked at her son for the first time and saw him still with his eyes closed and motionless. She habitually cursed, you're not awake yet, you're dragging me to death. She walked to the bedside, lifted the blanket, turned over and scrubbed him, massaged and tapped him. And even changed his intimate clothes. Speaking of which, despite being bedridden for so long, Wang Xian's body is still as clean as ever, without any pressure ulcers. This is simply a miracle in the hot and humid Jiangnan region. Although it is already autumn, it is still difficult for a thin woman to flip a 16-year-old man. Halfway through the busy work, the old lady was already sweating profusely. She wiped her sweat and said dejectedly, people say that marrying a Han, getting married to a Han, dressing and eating, raising children, and preventing diseases and aging. It's good for me. I owe you the royal family in my previous life, so I'll be your ox and horse." After finishing speaking, he continued to wipe his armpits. Wang Xian was ticklish and couldn't help but tremble. The old lady was immediately excited and rushed to the bedside. Wang Xian still needs to pretend to be unconscious. The old lady's big ear scraper has already slapped her. It's really hitting him, and the pain makes him unable to resist grinning and cracking his mouth. "Wang Gui, Wang Gui." The old lady looked at the vivid expression on his face and screamed in surprise, "Come on." Wang Gui was sweeping the floor outside when he heard the old lady shouting. He threw a broom and rushed in, covering his head and asking, "Mom, what's wrong?" "Look at your younger brother, he's awake," the old lady said, flipping open Wang Xian's eyelids and seeing his eyeballs dribbling. "Now he can't pretend anymore." "What did Dr. Wu say?" Dr. Wu said. Wang Gui scratched his head for a moment and said, "I forgot. Hurry up and hire a doctor." The old lady couldn't stand his clumsy behavior the most, so she kicked her eldest son out with a flying kick. Quickly, Dr. Wu from the county medical department rushed over to diagnose Wang Xian. Since Wang Xian has accepted his current identity, he took this opportunity to wake up. In fact, there is no need for diagnosis. As long as you are not blind, you can see Wang Xian slowly opening his eyes. The whole family was completely relieved. The little girl's silver bell jumped 3 feet high, laughing and jumping around the bed. Wang Gui also wiped away tears. Even Wang Gui's wife was very happy and asked Dr. Wu, "You don't need to spend money on medicine anymore, do you?" Dr. Wu was drinking tea to quench his thirst, and upon hearing this, he sprayed Wang Gui's face. The old lady glared fiercely at Wang Gui's wife and said to Dr. Wu, "She asked when she can be so efficient." "I can't be in a hurry," Dr. Wu said slowly. "His body is too weak. I'll prescribe a nourishing prescription and eat it for a month to see." "Ah, you still need to take medicine." Wang Gui's wife, with all her joy in her eyes, complained loudly, "He has eaten up his house, still taking it. Can't you raise it slowly?" The old lady is actually not willing to spend more money. How could she still have money? Of course, Dr. Wu twisted his beard and said, "But he has been lying for too long and his body is in great deficit. If he doesn't recover quickly, he may recover in the future and become a sick seedling." "Can we just provide him with supplementary services?" the old lady asked again. "Su doesn't receive compensation. If you give him compensation now, you will kill him." Dr. Wu shook his head and said with a sympathetic expression, "Sister-in-law, Wang Xian is so young that he can't be left with the root of his illness." The old lady's face changed for a moment, and she finally nodded fiercely, "Sir, let's prescribe it." So Wang Gui sharpened the ink, and Dr. Wu spread out the paper. With his pen and brush, he made a prescription, dried the ink, and handed it to Wang Gui. "Dao, take the medicine, take it early." Wang Gui responded carefully and took the prescription, then glanced at the old lady again. "Send the gentleman back and catch the medicine on the way," the old lady sighed. "You tell Mr. Lu to keep an account first and settle it at the end of the month." "Mother, the pharmacy has already told us that they won't give us any more," Wang Gui whispered to his mother as he watched his sister pack Dr. Wu's medicine box. "They said you're not trustworthy. They've been saying these things for 3 months and haven't seen a penny. How do you know if you don't go pestering?" The old lady angrily took off a gold bracelet from her wrist and patted it in his hand, saying, "Put this in there, take the medicine first before we talk." Wang Gui breathed a sigh of relief. Dr. Wu had already packed up and had been leisurely drinking tea. After the women finished speaking, he stood up and said goodbye. "Wang Gui, go see you off, sir." The old lady took out another string of money from her waist, about 21, and handed it to her son. Dr. Wu smiled and said, "Today the sun is shining in the west, and I have seen my younger sibling's money. After bothering you so many times, I finally got a good impression of the waiter, the old lady said shamelessly. I have settled the diagnosis fee together this time. Dr. Wu took a step outside and almost fell. He turned around and smiled bitterly, saying, if you give me a consultation together, it's worth a penny. He waved his hand and said, forget it, I'll do it as a good person. It's a free clinic. Thank you very much, sir. The old lady didn't refuse, so she took the money back from her son and said, when my family develops, I will also give you 2 packs of snowflake silver. You dare not give it to me, but you dare not take it. Mr. Wu shook his head and laughed as he walked out. Wang Gui quickly gave it away. When Wang Gui saw Mr. Wu off, the old lady glanced at her daughter.in.law and said, are you feeling unwell now? Wang Gui's daughter.in.law blushed and said, it's not good yet. I'll come over and take a look, and I'll have to go back and lie down. She then walked back into the room with a gloomy expression. The old lady snorted and turned her gaze to her son, feeling both happy and angry in her heart. Happy and easy to understand. The reason for the fire is that her son came out of the gambling house and was injured by someone. The county also failed to solve the case, and in the end, the case could only be settled on the grounds of retaliation for gambling disputes. So in my mother's heart, this son was beaten because of gambling. I have long been desperate for this idle and gambling-loving son. As soon as he thought about his inevitable relapse in the future, which would make the family worse, my mother couldn't help but feel angry. If it weren't for Wang Xian just waking up, there would have been a scolding. I'll settle accounts with you again in the future. The old lady looked at her son again and again, and finally gave him a fierce glance. She left the silver bell to take care of him and went back to work alone. Sue felt a sense of emptiness after being excited, and her footsteps felt a bit sluggish. When she reached the door, she stumbled on the threshold. The old lady kicked the threshold and angrily said, saw it down sooner or later to burn firewood. After my mother left, my younger sister Yongle cooked millet porridge in the morning, mixed some hot water and fed it to Wang Xian. Yongle's personality is very similar to that of an old lady, but after all, she is young and not spicy, just lively. She twittered and talked about Wang Xian's situation after he fell into a coma. She could not help but scold him. Through her words, Wang Xian learned that although the family was in a very bad situation, if it weren't for his downfall, they wouldn't have been like this now, owing a lot of debt and not even being able to eat. Thinking of this, Wang Xian realized that the garlic mixed under his mother's feet just now seemed to be due to her weak limbs from hunger. 600 years later, there was also a saying of returning to poverty due to one illness. Wang Xian remembered that Lu Sun's family had also suffered such a defeat, so he believed his sister's words without hesitation, and couldn't help but feel the guilt of the eldest. The neighbors all told their mother that you wouldn't be able to wake up. If you procrastinate and spend a day's money, you'll have to drag down good people. It's better to cut off the benefits early on. It's because of my mother's temper that no one can bring back what she has recognized. If it were someone else's house, you would have died a lot. Brother, even if I beg you, my family owes you so much debt to treat your illness. When you're better, make sure to cut off those people. Anshan can find a job, okay? The younger sister said and became disheartened. Forget it, it's easy to change your nature. How can we expect you to change it? Being looked down upon as scum by a teenage girl, Wang Xian wished he could find a crack in the ground to get in. How could he open his mouth? Open your mouth. Seeing him refuse to eat, Yongle Xingyan widened her eyes and said, just say a few words about you and you want to go on a hunger strike. If you have the backbone, show it to us. When the time comes, my sister will kowtow to you and apologize. Wang Xian's face was flushed with embarrassment. Seeing that he still didn't eat, the little girl pouted and said, second brother, don't be ignorant. Our family is not what we used to be. We don't produce millet in Fuyang. My mother used an old hen laying eggs to exchange for these 10 pounds. We haven't tasted a single bite. Wang Xian sighed deeply, finishing the porridge in one bite without wasting a single grain. End of this chapter. Chapter 2. Ouch, my brother D. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 2. Ouch, my brother D. At this moment, Wang Gue came back with the medicine. The old lady was busy making shoes when she saw him carrying the medicine. She was immediately overjoyed and said, "Did they really give it?" Wang Gue nodded and handed the medicine package to the old lady. He then took out a bracelet from his arms and handed it to the old lady. "What's wrong?" Seeing his bear-like expression, the mother understood everything and sneered, "They didn't fall for it. Seeing that it's something taken out by my mother, I need to have 2 extra eyes," Wang Gue said in a muffled voice. "Let someone who knows the art take a look and say it's made of copper, and they'll paint it with a layer of gold powder. A group of blind people, this is clearly real gold." The old lady's face didn't blush and she put the gold dot-plated bracelet on her wrist, not mentioning this anymore. "So how did you catch the medicine?" The Lin family girl was filling medicine for her mother, and when she saw that I had been snatched away by those people, she put me on the mat. Wang Gue replied honestly, she said she would come to see her younger brother again in the next few days. "Humph, hypocritical." The old lady scolded, "Her Lin family has caused so much trouble for our family. If she dares to come to our house, I'll break her leg." Wang Gue dared not talk back to his mother, shrinking his neck and not speaking. "I haven't asked yet, how much does this medicine cost per set?" 101. Wang Gue whispered. "So expensive." The old lady took a breath of air conditioning and wiped her sweat, saying, "This will take a month to eat. Selling the old lady is not enough. Think of another way." Wang Gue sighed and said, "Mom, I'll go see my younger brother." After saying this, he went to the west wing and sat down for a while before leaving with a heavy heart. At noon, when the old lady saw that Wang Gui's wife had not come out again, she knew that she found the food unpleasant again. The Wang family almost had 3 meals of brown rice soaked in green vegetable soup a day, with at most some soy sauce and fava beans added, which was really hard to swallow. Of course, you have to be selective to be picky. My mother, Wang Gue, and Yinling had no choice, so naturally they ate nothing left. Seeing that Wang Gui's wife had not yet come out, the old lady shared a bowl of rice with her children and said, "Don't waste it." No one was worried that Wang Gui's wife might be hungry, because she could always buy delicious food unnoticed and hide inside to eat alone while Wang Gue was working. So when she didn't come out to eat yet, the family knew that Wang Gui's wife was eating alone again. But if someone spends their own dowry and doesn't eat it in front of you, no one can say anything directly about her. The old lady finished her meal first, and then wrapped the dozen or so pairs of cloth shoes she had prepared during the past half-month in her spare time into a bundle and went to the market for sale. Today happened to be an episode. She was supposed to go this morning, but it was delayed by Wang Xian's matter. After the siblings finished their meal, Yinling tidied up the dishes, while Wang Gue returned to the room with a worried expression on his face. He didn't even hear his sister call him. Thinking that his brother was arguing with his sister in law again, and that Yinling didn't take it to heart, he finished his household chores and went to feed Wang Xian medicine with a medicine bowl. As a large bowl of medicinal soup was about to be finished, Wang Gui's wife suddenly erupted in the east wing room, shouting and cursing. Yinling patted her forehead in frustration and muttered, "Here we go again. When I have the ability to curse at home." Although she was angry, her children couldn't get involved and could only listen there. "All right, you king snot, you've been snotting for half your life, and finally you've grown your skills." The voice suddenly became clearer, and it was obvious that the battlefield between the two had shifted from the house to the courtyard. "You've learned how to steal things. Who did you say stole something?" If it was a general scolding, Yinling pretended not to hear it, but when she heard her sister-in-law scold her elder brother for being a thief, she immediately became angry and put the bowl on the table, rushed to the door, questioning her sister. Law. Ask him if he stole it or not. Wang Gui's wife, holding a broom and pointing at Wang Gui hiding behind the water tank, frowned and looked up. He stole my jewelry while I was sleeping, and I caught him. What's stealing between a couple? Wang Gui blushed as he saw his younger sister also come out, and said with a sarcastic tone, "My mother said that husband and wife are one, and yours is also mine." Fart. That's my dowry. Wang Gui's wife angrily rushed towards him when she saw Wang Gui's sophistry. That's my whole family's property, it has nothing to do with your Wang family. This woman is tall and powerful. If she were to give a fight, Wang Gui couldn't bear it. He had to be kicked out of the yard and run around, pleading, "Even if I can't borrow enough, if I make money later, I'll just repay you." "What are you stealing my jewelry for? Do you have a crush outside?" Wang Gui's wife angrily said. "Don't talk nonsense." Wang Gui felt embarrassed in front of his sister. "How could that be?" "That's right, it's up to you." Wang Gui's wife snorted contemptuously. Suddenly, he remembered that in the morning, his wife were worried about Wang Xian's medicine money, and now there was nothing else they didn't understand. Originally, Wang Gui stole his own dowry to buy medicine for Wang Xian. This is her taboo. She got married when the Wang family was in good times back then, with a matching family and a very generous dowry. Unexpectedly, after her father-in-law committed a crime, the Wang family quickly declined, which kept her in a state of suppressed anger. However, her powerful mother-in-law couldn't resist. Until her mother-in-law and husband lost everything and wanted to continue Wang Xian's life, Wang Gui's wife finally started to get into a quarrel. She firmly refused to spend money on the living and dead, and the often spoken phrase was, "Saving lives is also a disaster, it's better to let him die quickly." Over time, Wang Xian became a collection of her grievances against the Wang family. Wang Gui would be furious just by mentioning it, let alone stealing her money to buy medicine for him. Wang Gui's wife went crazy with anger and pounced at Wang Gui with open teeth and claws, saying, "Wang Nost, you know what I hate the most. I won't have sex with you anymore." Wang Gui felt guilty and shouted, "No more, no more." One side hid in the courtyard. Ho remained motionless inside the house all day, with no roots under her feet. After chasing after each other for a while, she felt guilty and short of breath. After mixing garlic, she fell hard to the ground, hit her head on the shovel, and immediately shed blood all over her face. "Oh my, I killed someone." Ho sure was so painful that she touched her forehead again. Her hands were covered in blood, and she shouted silently, "Help, help." Before lunch, the old lady sold out her shoes and grabbed 2 pairs of medicine for Wang Xian to take home. She was very proud in her heart, because she had to cut down 2 sets of medicine from 101 to 171. The expert who can pluck feathers from the iron rooster outside of Luyuanwei can be counted with just one hand in Fuyang County. Unexpectedly, as soon as I entered the door, I saw bloodstains on the ground. The old lady immediately became angry and said, "As soon as I'm not at home, you've gone crazy. Wang Gui's wife, come with me to the yamen to argue." Based on her years of experience, it must have been Wang Gui's rammed goods that were beaten and bled by the Ho family mother. Before he could finish speaking, Wang Gui lifted the curtain from the room and whispered, "It wasn't me who was injured, it was Zuelian." Scared. The old lady immediately relaxed her expression and said, "The sun is shining in the west, and my son is actually a man once." "No." Wang Gui said with a snort, "It was when she was chasing me that she fell on her own." "What do I say?" The old lady sighed in disappointment and said, "Dogs can't change how they eat shit." Putting down the medicine, she took a glance into the eastern room and saw Ho's head tangled like a spindle, lying in bed humming. The blood seeped out of the gauze, which looked quite amazing. Ho sure knew she had come in, but she couldn't get up due to illness. She had already asked someone to inform her family. "We should wait for the family to arrive before deciding what to do," so as not to get fired at by this old man in vain. Back in the day, she didn't know what to do. She wanted to break her wrist with her mother-in-law, but she was scolded by her mother-in-law and fainted. Now, when she thinks of it, she still shivers. Ho sure looked like this, and the old lady couldn't say anything. She was very shrewd in her heart, knowing that she couldn't get involved in such things and could only wait and see what happened. Coming out of Wang Gui's room, the old lady lit a fire to cook, washed dishes while eating, and then pushed Wang Xian again. Seeing that the Ho family had not yet arrived, she cursed, "What a delay." After a while, Ho's older brother and younger brother arrived. They were dressed in glamorous clothes, proud, and accompanied by a few long-term workers, creating a grand and bustling group of people. Their family had a 100-acre tea garden, and there were also those who worked in the county. Faced with a dilapidated family like the Wang family, they naturally had a psychological advantage. Helplessly, the old lady kicked out all the idle people and only allowed the Ho brothers to come in. They covered their noses as soon as they entered the door, as if standing in this dilapidated courtyard would tarnish their own dignity. Seeing their younger sister lying in bed, looking desperate, the two of them immediately became furious and scolded Wang Gui like they were training their grandchildren. It was just because Wang Gui's mother was present that they dared not use dirty words to greet her. It's not that they respect the elderly, but rather the names of people and the shadows of trees. Once this mother tiger gets angry, it's hard to tell who will be scolded. But the old lady remained silent as if she had lost her virginity, letting them train her son to become dizzy and disoriented, with a gloomy face that she didn't know what she was thinking. Until the training became dry, the two of them stopped and took a sip of water. They had their own purple clay teapot, which used their own water to brew their own tea. Then they asked their sister, "I've said everything he needs to say. I'm afraid he won't dare to say anything else in the future. What else do you have to say?" "Two things: if you agree to me, then we'll live together. If you don't agree, then we'll break up." Ho suppressed herself in the shadow of her mother-in-law. She hides inside all day, that's not daring to look at her mother-in-law's cold eyes. Ho felt that if she continued like this, she would go crazy in less than 6 months. This time, it was easy to find an opportunity to kick her nose and face, and she was determined to take the opportunity to change her situation. "Let's talk about it first," her brother nodded and said. "Firstly, I want to split it up. I don't want anything from the Wang family, as long as it's split up." Ho dared not look at her mother-in-law and lay in bed, looking at the ceiling. Finally, after holding her heart for 2 years, she said, "Secondly, he must make a poisonous oath that after splitting up, he won't be allowed to give money to his family, otherwise giving birth to a son will be shameless." As soon as these words were spoken, the room was quiet. The old lady's hand, which was wrapped in her sleeve, was already clenching loudly, but she still didn't express it. Ho's older brother felt that this was too inappropriate and quickly made up for it. "My younger sister's point is that we don't separate our homes. If we've been separated, we'll each spend our own money. That's also good. Since we can't live together, we'll all go our separate ways." After a moment, he looked at Wang Gui's mother with a guilty expression and said, "Is that right, Mrs. Wang?" Newcomer's new book, seeking collection and recommendation. Dear friends, everything is difficult at the beginning. Please support, exert yourself, and continue to exert yourself. End of this chapter. Chapter 3. Turning Back Suddenly. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 3. Turning back suddenly. The reason why Ho said she wanted to split up and her own aura immediately weakened by 3 parts is because in this era, there were laws that prevented her parents from dividing their family and property while they were still alive. Otherwise, children will go to jail. Every month, the government will announce this in front of the Shenming Pavilion, and 3-year-old children also know about it. That's why Ho said so generously, "I don't want anything from the Wang family," deliberately not mentioning separation, but using separation instead is actually hiding one's ears and stealing the bell. However, such matters are not prosecuted by the people or investigated by the officials. There are too many brothers who haven't lived together, some who have separated, and not all of them have no parents. As long as you don't file a lawsuit, the government won't handle it unless someone wants to mess with you. If Ho wants to succeed without leaving any future troubles, she must obtain the consent of her mother.in.law and ask her to provide a proof of separation without separation before daring to break through the wall. Everyone looked at the old lady, and she pulled out her hand that was holding it until it turned white. She gathered her hair in front of her forehead, neither anxious nor agitated, and calmly looked at Yongle. After looking at her son, she looked at the Ho family again and said, "I've had enough with this greedy, lazy, and malicious woman too." The Ho family was about to get angry, but when they heard her voice change, they said, "Aren't you just going to separate and not separate? As long as Yongle agrees, I'll go out." The Ho family was immediately overjoyed and turned to Yongle, urging him in unison, "What are you waiting for? Promise." Based on their experience, Yongle, a softy who never dares to say no for a lifetime, is determined not to oppose. "Don't." Yongle begged Hoshir pitifully, "The waiter is still sick, the younger sister is still young, and the old lady's health is not good. How can she hold on? We've been separated at this time, and will be stabbed in the spine." "You don't have to worry," the old lady sneered, "I've survived such difficult days. Without the Wong butcher, I can't even eat pigs with fur." "Mother." Yongle, who has been a mother and son for over 20 years, couldn't hear that the old lady's words were ironic, and he was even more hesitant to let go. "Mother has said that, why are you hesitating?" Hoshir didn't bother pretending to be dead and jumped up from the bed, holding a spindle head and saying, "You have ruined everything and treated the mistress for half a year. Now he has finally woken up. You, as an older brother, are already enough. Who in the neighborhood can say anything about you?" She said with emotion, "Yongle, don't you dream of becoming the boss. After we parted ways, I will take out my dowry and open a paper mill for you, and let you taste the taste of being the boss. Well, don't worry about where you live." How could my uncle not know my sister's thoughts, so he followed her and said, "My 2-bedroom house in the county town is empty. You can move over today. There's also an old lady inside who will be taken care of when we eat and dress, not 10,000 times stronger than you are now, a cow and a horse. The old man at home loves your wife the most. As long as you agree to move over, the money your family owes me will definitely be written off. My brother.in.law also said, if you don't believe me, I can write a document for you. The money was not borrowed by him, is the document he wrote useless. These empty words that ghosts don't believe, only rammed goods like Yongle can believe them." The Ho siblings thought to themselves. Sure enough, upon hearing the third point, Yongle's face showed a strong expression of struggle, biting his lips tightly, unsure of what to say. "Yongle, if you don't agree, I'll go sue the official." Ho sure knew that this guy's worst thing was to make up his mind. He couldn't do without using his trump card, so he scared him and said, "You heard my brother's words just now. I'll be injured. If you go sue the official, you'll have to be arrested by the government." Yongle was struck by lightning for a moment, and his mother suddenly changed her color. Huada stood up and pointed at Hoshir, saying, "All right, I'll accompany you. I'll expose all the ugly things you've done in these years and make you stink 10 miles away." When her mother.in.law exerted her power, Hoshir was so scared that she shrank her neck. But now that she had reached this point, how could all her previous efforts be wasted? She struggled to turn her head, not looking at the old lady but at Yongle. "If you don't believe me, give it a try." Yongle still bit his lips tightly, with a constipated expression on his face, and remained silent. "Yongle, stop procrastinating and answer quickly." The Ho brothers impatiently urged, saying that they still have to go for a drink tonight. How can they waste time here? My brother.in.law looked up irritably and saw Zai Yinling looking outside the door. He blurted out and cursed, "What are you looking at? Go back to the house." After all, the silver bell was still small and trembled with fear. My brother.in.law turned around and was about to scold Wang Gui a few more words when he heard a roar 10 times louder than him. "Please shut up." This roar stunned everyone, paused for a moment, and they all looked at Wang Gui and Wang Dalang. This roar was actually emitted from Wang's snotty mouth, who has always been submissive. After a while, the Ho brothers finally regained their senses, and their brother.in.law chuckled and said, "What do you mean? Don't yell at my sister." Wang Gui scanned his eldest and younger uncles with red eyes, and finally fell on Ho Shi. Gradually losing his aura, he whispered, "I'm not separated." "Can you say it again?" The Ho family was stunned. "I'm not separated." Wang Gui's voice became quieter. "If you want to leave, just leave." Okay, Ho Shi thought he had killed Wang Gui, but to her surprise, this servant dared not comply and angrily tidied up his clothes. "Wait for the government to catch you. Wang Gui, it's still in time for you to change your mind now." My eldest uncle saw that she was about to die, so he quickly made up for it. "Once my sister steps out of this door, she won't be your daughter.in.law anymore. Also, the debt your family owes us is already due. We were embarrassed to ask for it because we were relatives. Now, for the sake of a useless younger brother, we don't need to show mercy. Hurry up and bring a lawsuit to the county, accusing you of not paying the debt and injuring your wife. Your life will be over, you know. I don't divide my family." Wang Gui was indeed scared to the point where his face turned white, but he still lowered his head and repeatedly said only those 4 words, his feet almost rubbing through the floor tiles. "Wang Gui, you've come up with a good idea." The old lady even advised, "Now you're a mute widow on the East Street, and you'll need a dowry of 5 guan. I don't have the ability to remarry you. I'm not separated." Wang Gui had already thought very clearly and finally raised his head. "Sualian is taken care of by her parents' family, I can rest assured." "Pooh." Ho almost spat out a mouthful of thick phlegm on Wang Gui's face, picked up her bundle, and stormed out in anger. "Wang knows, the day you regretted having your intestines bruised and knelt down to beg me." As she walked into the courtyard, she felt ashamed, angry, and resentful. She then walked into the western room and saw her uncle Wang Xian calmly looking at her. His black and white eyes were bright and terrifying, even more terrifying than his mother's. "I cursed myself for having my head smashed today. What's so scary about this useless sick seedling?" Ho Shi glared at him with a fierce expression, pointing at his nose and cursing, "Waste, you're the one who harms this family alive. I'll just watch you bring disaster to the Wang family until everyone dies." Wang Xian remained calm as water, but finally spoke up. "Sister-in-law, I didn't have too much of mine in the past, which made you angry. It was my fault. But now I have changed my mind. If it's because of me, you will have to separate from my elder brother. We can wait and see. In a few months, the Wang family will improve. Otherwise, I'll leave and I won't drag you down anymore." "Ha ha ha." Ho laughed as if hearing something funny and said, "Can you change your personality? Dogs can't change their ways of eating shit. As long as you're here for a day, the Wang family will never improve. You can watch." Wang Xian sighed lightly and stopped speaking. "Okay, I'll watch." Ho laughed and walked away. "See how you continue to harm this family." The Ho brothers and sisters left, naturally carrying their dowry. Wang Gui, who was a rammer, even helped them call cars and move boxes, which was a busy job. This has left the neighbors puzzled. "I've heard the Wang family arguing so much, why did Wang Gui help the Ho family move the dowry box again in the blink of an eye? Is it necessary to separate families?" A neighbor couldn't help but ask, "Wang Gui, have you ever moved out?" Wang Gui shook his head and said dejectedly, Sualian is going back to her mother's house, and I will stay." The neighbors were very surprised and couldn't help but cast a refreshing glance at Wang Gui, indicating that Ho Shi didn't have a good reputation in front of the neighbors. When Wang Gui returned, he saw the old lady standing in the courtyard. He lowered his head and whispered, "Mother." "Wang Gui, you did the right thing," my mother said with a approving gaze. "Although your younger brother is indeed a waste, he is still your younger brother. If you leave him at this time, my mother will definitely sue you to the government." Wang Gui said anxiously, "Now the whole family is also going to sue the officials. Tell me the truth." The old lady spat and said, "You idiot, thanks to your father being a criminal justice master, you don't even understand these rules. If a husband beats his wife, you'll have to break it. She just broke her skin a bit, and even if she does, she'll be beaten for nothing." "Oh." Wang Gui nodded sullenly, but also felt relieved. "Let's go rest." The old lady knew that he must have felt uncomfortable making this decision, so she sent Wang Gui back to his house to rest. But he turned to the door of the west wing and looked at the child, saying, "I heard everything you just said. I also said it to my mother." Wang Xian and his mother looked at each other with sharp black and white eyes. "Empty talk is useless," the old lady disdainfully said. "Make an appearance and talk big, otherwise I'll treat you as farting. Just look at it." Wang Xianming knew she was a provocative tactic, so he raised his eyebrows and said in a deep voice, "I, Wang Xian, am different." "Oh." A resounding oath, exchanged for a black cloth, made the old lady strike accurately and impartially on his face. "Little rabbit, first you can wipe your buttocks yourself." The old lady clapped her hands and went to prepare dinner. "Well, first take off the cloth, I'm suffocating." Wang Xian's hand couldn't even lift it. It was Yongle who saved his life. This contrast made Wang Erlang, who had just made a grand wish, smile bitterly. The body is the capital of everything, it cannot be moved, everything is empty talk. That's all for today, continue to seek recommendations and collections. End of this chapter. Chapter 4. Sister Lin. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 4. Sister Lin. Wang Xian has already woken up, but he has been lying for too long, and his muscles have not only shrunk severely but are also out of control, so he cannot move. This feeling is too bad, but fortunately he is only 16 years old and his body recovers quickly. In a few days, he can be helped up and sit up, no longer needing to be fed with water or food. As soon as he was able to move, he began to follow the plan he had planned in his mind for rehabilitation, starting with rehabilitation exercises for his small joints in his hands and feet. As long as he keeps his eyes open, he will repeat the process until he can't move. At first, the family was very panicked and thought he had committed some kind of magic and wanted to invite a Taoist to come and control the demon. Wang Xian explained for a while before making them understand that he was working hard to accelerate his recovery. "Although I don't believe this can help with recovery, my mother is very busy. As long as he's not in a daze, it doesn't matter whether he's a ghost or a jumping god." So Wang Xian continued to stimulate his nerves. In fact, the process of rehabilitation was extremely painful, and every effort was like having millions of needles pricked, requiring great perseverance. Fortunately, he has an extremely resilient temperament. Since he is determined to quickly get rid of his useless title, he can endure any hardship. Yongle, who accompanied him throughout the journey, knew that every time his brother lay in bed and finished dancing, he felt like he had been pulled out of the water, clearly enduring great pain. But she never heard him snort, even though sometimes he unknowingly bites his lips. This is not once or twice, but about 10 times a day, and it's like this every day. Is this still my delicate second brother? Can a serious illness transform a person? Yongle couldn't understand the reason behind it, but her gaze towards second brother gradually changed. 8 days later, Wang Xian was able to go down to the ground, and he was also very surprised by this speed. "I thought that with my 2 swords of rehabilitation exercises, even if I tried twice as hard, I wouldn't be able to achieve results so quickly. After much thought, he estimated that his mother had been insisting on giving him massage while he was unconscious, causing his body to not completely rust to death. In fact, there is another reason, which is that Dr. Wu's decoction of 100 won per pair, although the price is deceiving, the effect is really not deceiving. Anyway, being able to go to the ground is better than being in bed all day. When Yongle told the good news to the old lady and big brother, the two of them didn't even eat, so they ran to the west wing room. Seeing Wang Xian taking 2 slow steps down with the help of Wang Gui, the old lady turned her head and looked at the sky outside the door. She took several deep breaths, but couldn't help it. She shed a string of tears and cursed, "The broken house has fallen into my mother's eyes." Wang Gui also wiped away his tears one by one, and Yongle cried even more, leaving Wang Xian somewhat puzzled. He remembers when he woke up, his family was happy, but he hasn't cried with such joy until now. But on second thought, it's not difficult to understand. After all, in this era, many injuries can cause permanent damage. Although he woke up at that time, no one knew if he could still stand up. What is the difference between not being able to stand up and fainting? So it wasn't until this moment that the family finally breathed a sigh of relief, knowing that he could really recover. The next day, Wang Gui asked someone to make a pair of crutches for Wang Xian to lean on. After practicing for a few days, Wang Xian was finally able to step out of his room and take a look at the yard where he lived, and the blue sky above him. The sky is really blue. Although there is only a small side, it is like a transparent sapphire. Wang Xian greedily took a deep breath and felt the long-lost freedom being intoxicated. The sound of the doorknob being knocked on came from outside the door. Yongle opened the door and saw a middle-aged man in his 40s, holding a bamboo basket in one hand. She asked crudely, "Uncle, who are you looking for?" "Are you a miss from the Wang family?" The middle-aged man grinned and said, "May I ask if Aunt Wang is there?" "My mother is not here." In front of outsiders, Yongle was still very polite. "Uncle, what's up?" "Looking at the Mid-Autumn Festival, my girl has come to deliver mooncakes to Aunt Wang," the middle-aged man said as he turned to see a girl of 17 or 18 years old, who took off the mi luo from her head. Yongle fixed her gaze and immediately changed her expression. "You are Lin Rongxing's sister. Does Miss Wang recognize me?" The girl had a picturesque expression and was thinner than a yellow flower. Although her dress was conservative and spacious, her fair and slender wrist was unbelievable. Her face was as thin as a palm, as if a gust of autumn wind could blow her away. "This is a girl who is easily pitied," but Yongle pulled down her face and said, "Nonsense, what are you doing here?" "My uncle just said." The girl's voice was soft and low, with an indescribable weariness. "My mother wouldn't want anything from your family." Silver Bell's voice was crisp and urgent, just as the name suggests. However, as she spoke, she unconsciously slowed down her tone towards the girl and said, "You go quickly. If you run into my mother, you'll be dead." The girl is so sweaty, does she say that about her own mother? However, she chose this time to come while Mrs. Wang was going to the market, and she might not be able to come back for a while. Based on her experiences over the past 2 years, she is more than enough to deal with a teenage girl. She smiled faintly and said, "A few days ago, I ran into the eldest brother of the Wang family at the Lu family pharmacy. I heard that Erlang was awake, so I said I wanted to come and see him." She said with a slight bow, "It's just that there are many things at home, and I didn't expect it to be delayed until today. It's really not appropriate." "You don't need to be hypocritical," Yongle pouted. "I bought a few Liaodong ginseng from Hangzhou, which can be considered as an apology," the Lin family girl continued nonchalantly. "Oh." Silver Bell's expression suddenly froze. "The day before yesterday, my mother was still worried and said that my second brother could take 2 more pairs of medicine to nourish himself. But high-quality supplements are extremely expensive, and if the Wang family can hold on and finish the medicine, it's already the limit. I can't even borrow it now, and she can't use it either. She's completely at a loss. Although second brother said that if he didn't replenish his energy, he could slowly recover it, Dr. Wu said that if he didn't quickly replenish the lost essence, he would still be a sick seedling in the future. These past few days have worried my mother so much that she sleeps at night like making pancakes. Based on the principle of face is worth a lot of money, and affordability is the most important, Yongle gritted her teeth and changed her tone. Old Pestle is at the door. People think the Wang family doesn't know etiquette, come in and talk. The residential buildings in Jiangnan are already compact, and the courtyard of the Wang family is even more cramped. As soon as the Lin family girl entered, she saw Wang Er leaning on her crutches, looking at her with a gloomy gaze. The girl from the Lin family's heart tightened as she quickly bowed and said, Wang's younger brother is doing well. Okay, that's great. Wang Xian glanced at the Lin family girl and sneered, Sister Lin, long time no see. It's been a long time since we last saw each other. The Lin family girl, who remained calm and composed in front of Silver Bell, seemed very uncomfortable towards Wang Xian and explained, I've been running around Hangzhou and the capital for half a year. I only found out you were injured when I came back a few days ago. Is that right? Wang Xian said coldly, do you think that's reasonable? I can't justify it. The Lin family girl took a deep breath and met his gaze, saying, so I'm here. If I want to fight or scold, I'll do whatever you want. The conversation between the two startled Yongle and the uncle. What was the situation? The two of them are obviously old acquaintances, and there are some stories that have to be told. Oh my goodness, my brother must have had an affair with the sister of the enemy. The Silver Bell girl unfolded her rich imagination and quickly retouched, what a bloody plot is this? Impossible, impossible. The uncle also cried painfully, my girl is blind, and she won't like this kind of junk dim sum. The two were so shocked that when Wang Xian and Miss Lin suggested to have a private conversation, they took it for granted. But when the uncle helped Wang Xian into the house, he used a hidden force in his hand and threatened in a low voice, if you dare to be rude to my girl, I can't spare you. Little did he know that Wang Xian had become numb to the pain, and a bitter smile hung from the corner of his mouth, saying, who can I be rude to now? That's right. The uncle couldn't help but laugh at his foolishness when he saw Wang Xianweek and Lu Fufeng's appearance. He put him on a chair, then covered the door and went out. He also said to the Silver Bell sitting in the courtyard with his mouth wide open, please don't say anything about this matter. Did anyone believe me? It's nothing to make people laugh at. Yongle regained consciousness, and Bai took a glance before going to decoct medicine for Wang Xian. The thought of eating today's last pear and using ginseng for nourishment tomorrow made Yongle extremely happy. Since it was sent by my second brother's mistress, I naturally used it with peace of mind. How could the Lin family girl take a liking to him just because of his second brother's virtue? Although the other party is an enemy, Yongle has to admit that Miss Lin is really good looking and is said to be able to read. I heard that when the Lin family is good, the matchmaker who comes to her house to propose marriage can line up a street. The fire of the little girl's gossip is raging, it can be boiled into medicine. She wished she could turn into a mosquito and enter the West Wing to listen to what the people inside were saying. I reckon if she hears, she'll have to raise her sword and chase Miss Lin. In the western room, Wang Xian and Miss Lin sat opposite each other, their eyes calm like autumn. I'm sorry, Miss Lin apologized deeply, I hurt you. It's really you who caused me trouble, Wang Xian said coldly, how malicious of you to let an idiot do such a terrible thing. After hearing his heart-wrenching words, Miss Lin's face turned pale. She tightly held her right hand to her chest and bowed her head apologetically again, saying, I was not careful. I only wanted to get rid of your entanglement at that time, so I made that kind of bet with you. She lifted her head, her eyes filled with steam, and she trembled as she said, I never thought you would actually stop me. You know I used to be an idiot. Wang Xian smiled bitterly in his heart. He used to be really stupid, and when he got two, he would use a hammer as a needle. Feeling that these words were simply weak and explosive, his voice sank and he said, "To save my father, I can do anything." End of this chapter. Chapter 5. Who are their enemies? You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 5. Who are their enemies? There are spiders forming webs on the window of the west wing, and the old lady refuses to sweep them, saying it's a good omen. Upon hearing Wang Xian's words, Miss Lin was very shocked. She couldn't help but look at this guy again and found that she could hardly match the scoundrel who was pestering her. In her memory, this guy was like a skinny dog, lacking backbone and annoying. But in front of Wang Xian, although his appearance did not change, there was no frivolous expression in his black and white eyes. Instead, he was replaced by a gaze as deep as a pond, so calm and cold. Just because of this change, his overall temperament has changed greatly. It's not easy to notice relatives like Lao Nyang and Yin Ling who spend time together day and night, but for someone like Lin who only sees each other after half a year, the difference felt becomes very obvious. Has it been that my head was damaged and hasn't recovered yet? Miss Lin thought so. But he whispered softly, "I saw you wrong, sorry." What's the use of just saying sorry? Wang Xian sneered, "If you really have sincerity, you should pay for the soup and medicine I've been lying here for the past 6 months. Although this may be a bit unfair, think about the frivolous steps of my mother, the patches on my sister's skirt, and the wife of my brother who ran away. He wants to strike a few fists of money from Sister Lin no matter what. This should be." Miss Lin wanted to retract her previous idea, realizing that Wang Er was still the same Wang Er. Thinking of this, she couldn't help but tremble in her heart. Is the day of extortion starting again? Miss Lin's maiden name is Qing'er. She was originally one of the wealthiest families in this county, and her older brother Lin Rongxing was also a student of the county's academy, which can be considered as a family of poetry and literature. Who knew that 2 years ago, a lawsuit dragged this family into an abyss, and it was in this case that Lin Rongxing confessed to bribing county officials, which resulted in Wang Xian's father being imprisoned and the Wang family starting to memorize characters. Lin Qing'er's brother was sentenced to be beheaded as the marquis of the prison, and his family was already in dire straits, but he was also entangled by Wang Xian, a scoundrel. For the past 2 years, he has been relying on the Lin family to apologize to his family. Today, he said his mother was sick, and tomorrow he said his brother fell. He changed his ways and came to ask her for money. Miss Lin was only 15 years old at that time, and she didn't have the same experience of life and insight into people's hearts as she does now. She felt that it was her brother who caused Wang Xingshu to be imprisoned, causing both the Wang family and her own family to suffer. "So I always give money when I ask for it." At that time, in order to overturn the case for Lin Rongxing, the Lin family had already used Lin Qing'er's dowry, and various expenses could naturally be reduced. But even if he later found out that this kid always asked for money, either to eat and drink with those fox friends or to gamble, after the Wang family didn't see him for a penny, Lin Qing'er didn't let Wang Xian come back empty-handed. At that time, she naively thought that this was also a way for her own family to compensate the Wang family, but little did she know that others would treat your kindness as weakness and make progress. Half a year ago, Wang Xian came again. Generally, Miss Lin would not see him and would ask the butler to pay some money to dismiss him. But this time Wang Xian said, "I'm not here to ask for money, I'm here to give money and insist on meeting Miss Lin." Lin Qing'er had no choice but to meet him. Wang Xian indeed pulled out a red envelope, which should have contained 110 won, but what was even more astonishing was that he said it was a dowry for a marriage proposal. Miss Lin was confused at the time and asked, "Who are you proposing marriage to?" "With you." Wang Xian spoke shamelessly and said, "Anyway, your husband's family has also resigned. I don't mind it. You can marry me." Lin Qing'er's face immediately turned red and then ironclad, but she also knew that it was impossible to reason with such a shameless dog. "If I drive him out myself, I don't know what this scoundrel will do." Upon reflection, she came up with a solution. She endured her disgust and said to Wang Xiandao, "I have been divorced before, and I am deeply moved to see that you will not abandon me. However, I have already sworn to heaven that anyone who can turn over the case for my family and give me a clear conscience will marry anyone. I will spare no effort for my servant or concubine, otherwise I will never marry again." Ah! Wang Xian was surprised and said, "How could you make such an oath? If my brother's wrongful case is not cleared up, I would feel like I'm not living or dying. How could I consider getting married?" Miss Lin sighed and her eyes immediately turned red, so there was no need to act. "Ah!" Wang Xian said unwillingly, "What will happen if you break your oath? If you break this oath, the heavens will strike with lightning and you will fall into 18 layers of hell forever." Lin Qing'er glanced at him and said, "In the future, men will be covered in abscesses and rot to death." Wang Xian got goosebumps all over his body and shuddered, saying, "You woman, you're too ruthless. He doesn't want to be covered in abscesses and rot to death." Lin Qing'er originally thought that this guy would know how to retreat and not mention this matter again. He took out Zhang Baoqiao and wanted to send him away. Unexpectedly, Wang Xian didn't want any money this time and patted his chest, saying, "Over the years, you've been better to me than my mother." Miss Lin almost vomited blood, so she listened to him continue, "Coming out to cheat, loyalty is the most important thing. Let's help with this." Miss Lin couldn't help but cry and laugh, "How can you help?" "Hee, I haven't figured it out yet." Wang Xian scratched his head and smiled, "When I think it out, I will naturally tell you." Afterwards, Wang Xian left, and Lin Qing'er forgot about it. Who would place even a glimmer of hope on someone like Wang Er? Unexpectedly, news came soon that he had been knocked unconscious. Miss Lin's heart was thumping and she asked someone to inquire. However, it was only when she heard that this guy had been beaten up in a casino that she finally felt at ease. Later, she even visited the house once, but was kicked out by Mrs. Wang Xian. Afterwards, Lin Qing'er left Fuyang and went to Hangzhou and Nanjing, gradually forgetting about such a person. But last month, she took a boat from Hangzhou back to Fuyang and heard several wandering youths talking about Wang Xian and Wang Erlang on the way. Unable to help but listen carefully, she was amazed and couldn't help but marvel at how great it was to treat us to meals all day when Wang Xian was around. Unfortunately, he dared to make a fortune in the casino and was beaten to death. The other person sneered and said, "What kind of casino makes a fortune? It's not really like that." Wang Er caused trouble and was killed. Who made the move? Everyone was surprised, and Lin Qing'er was even more stunned. "I don't know, but when I was at the Qian family gambling house, I heard the boss say he was drunk." The person said mysteriously, "He said this kid planned to stop and file a lawsuit on the day the old master took office, but when he heard that there was a lawyer involved in the lawsuit, he foolishly went to someone to write a lawsuit. Who knew they would turn around and stab the Zhao family?" "You said it was the Zhao family's hands." "I didn't say anything." A few young people chatted as they spoke, but Lin Qing'er was so shocked that she couldn't speak. Returning to Fuyang, she planned to go to the Wang family to explain the truth, but as soon as she spoke, her responsibility became greater. Without saying it, everything remains the same. Lin Qing'er is not a gentleman, and she must have a clear conscience. Besides, she has exhausted her family wealth and both physically and mentally, only making a final effort for her brother's case, and everything else has to be postponed. She told herself that no matter whether the battle was successful or unsuccessful, she would go to the Wang family to apologize afterwards, admit to beating and punishment, and have no hesitation. Who knew, Wang Erlang, who was said to never wake up again, suddenly woke up. That day, I met Wang Gui at the pharmacy of the Lu family. Upon hearing this news, Lin Qing'er was both happy and depressed. Fortunately, Wang Er is still alive, so his guilt will be much smaller. What's frustrating is that this guy has been lying down for half a year now. Why can't he lie down for a while longer and wake up after I finish working? That way, I can also strive for a proactive confession. It's not as awkward as now, as if he's not awake, and I'll continue to keep it a secret. Alas, even if you jump into the Yellow River now, you won't be able to wash it away. Miss Lin thought to herself in a sorrowful tone. Wang Erlang, who aspired to create an inspirational legend. The prodigal son returns without exchanging money, did not expect his previous efforts to be ruined by a plea for soup and medicine fees. In the eyes of Miss Lin, he became the scoundrel Wang Erlang again. However, he is indeed a scoundrel. Even if Wang Er listens to Miss Lin's words and complains, there is no reason to hold them responsible, and it is not because they forced him to go. Even if he plans to stop the car and shout for justice, it's not for Miss Lin. In this world, everyone treats Wang Er as a waste and a spendthrift, and no one understands him at all. It was not until now that Wang Xian merged with him that he realized that this child was not as bad as people imagined. He was just a pitiful person who only wanted to go back to the past. You should know that just 2 years ago, the Wang family was still a very prestigious and superior family in the county. At that time, Father Wang had not yet been sentenced to prison, but was a county prison warden. Later generations always thought that being a petty official was insignificant, but in fact, it was not like that. How many officials are there in a county? Apart from the county magistrate and the 2 officials, 3 yamen officials, and 4 elders, there are also many officials with great power in the 6 departments. To give an inappropriate analogy, Wang's father's original position was the director of the County Public Security, Procuratorial and Judicial Bureau, Political and Legal Commission. This series of judicial organs. At that time, Mr. Wang was really a big shot relied on by the county magistrate, flattered by the gentry, and feared by the people. Any matter related to the judiciary and criminal law in the county must pass through his hands. The saying goes, eat the plaintiff and eat the defendant. Coupled with various bad customs and norms, there is no need to bend the law and harm the justice, and one can also make a lot of money. At that time, the Wang family could not be called wealthy, but they were definitely wealthy, enjoying food and drink, wearing gold and silver, living in a big house, and being commanded by maids and servants. Wang Xian, a wealthy young master who fought chickens, walked dogs, and idled around, naturally emerged. But fortune and misfortune are unpredictable. Where can Mr. Wang stand by the river without getting his shoes wet? Finally, 2 years ago, this old martial arts world, who had lived among countless flowers and had no contact with leaves, fell head-on into the Lin family's case. Wang Xian naturally impressed himself with the case that changed his life. At first, it was just an ordinary case of missing persons. Later, his family members appealed, but the supervisor of the county rejected it. Who would have thought that while patrolling the county, the family members appealed again, not only turning the case upside down, but also dragging several officials below the supervisor of the county into the water. Father Wang, as the head of the prison, was the first to bear the brunt. How could he survive? First, he was sentenced to 200 sticks and exiled 3,000 miles. Later, the family spent a lot of money to clear the way, and then switched to working hard at the Shaoxing salt field. This case dealt a fatal blow to the Wang family. During his tenure, his father's income and privileges were lost, and he was also chased for stolen money and fined. In addition, his connections were also taken care of in the capital, and even a golden mountain was emptied. Besides, it hasn't been 2 years since Wang's father became the superior of the Duke of Justice, and his family is not wealthy. How can the Wang family have the principle of invincibility? Grandma, I found that the recommendation list has been exploded. In battle, everyone has 1 vote, but we have to go back and make a comeback. Let's have another round. End of this chapter. Chapter 6. What is worldly love? You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 6. What is worldly love? The whole family suddenly fell from the sky to the ground, causing various discomforts. Among them, Wang Xian was the most uncomfortable. He was no longer the leader of those fox friends. He went from bullying people all day long to being bullied, from spending money like water to being financially strapped, all of which made him feel extremely uncomfortable. He contracted the bad habit of gambling, but in fact, he dreamed of becoming rich overnight and going back to his old days. He wants to marry Lin Qing'er, hoping to take the money from the Lin family as his own and return to his old days. Even when he went to stop the newly appointed county magistrate's sedan chair and cry out for justice, he wanted his father to return to the county government office so that he could continue to be a young master and go back to his old days. All of his actions are for the sake of reliving his old dreams, but now Miss Lin is responsible. It's not a scoundrel, what is it? This is what it should be. Heart to heart, Miss Lin thought that all his experiences were caused by her words. She nodded and said seriously, before coming, I had already asked. Dr. Wu is a free clinic, mainly spent on the pharmacy outside of Lu Yuan's house. The total amount is 27 guan, and I'll make it up to 30 guan. Is that okay? Wang Xian was a bit surprised. Miss Lin was so generous that he didn't even dare to raise the price. But the scariest thing in the world is but, which means there's all the nonsense before, but right now, I can't get this money. Hee hee. Wang Xian sneered. Although there were more than 30 guan, what was it to a wealthy family like the Lin family? Don't sneer either, Miss Lin said with a bitter smile. I really didn't lie to you. I've been in Nanjing and Hangzhou for the past 6 months trying to avenge my family's case. I've been spending money like water outside, and my backyard has caught fire. I was swept clean by evil slaves, and the whole county knows about this case. Wang Xian felt a bit disappointed in his heart and thought to himself, why did Wang Er always succeed in extortion before, but when he comes to me, there's no point in it. But then Miss Lin said, please allow me some time. I will gather all the money for you until October. Why is October? Wang Xian asked. That was the day of the autumn review. Miss Lin whispered. Autumn review. Wang Xian surprisingly didn't understand. He had no choice but to eat, drink, and have fun. The prisoners who have been beheaded will undergo their final trial after autumn, and if there are no further issues, they will be taken to the riverbank. Miss Lin felt that he didn't know, which was a normal thing. What does this have to do with the money you gave me? It's okay, Miss Lin thought for a moment, feeling that she couldn't go into too much detail with such people, otherwise she would have to leak the news. She said directly, I'll file a lawsuit then. If I flip it over, I can lend you money. Can't you flip it over? I will have the power to change the seller's property then. Miss Lin said softly. Oh, Wang Xian nodded and said, so, have you found a way to go to the provincial capital and capital in the past 6 months? Miss Lin gave him a somewhat unexpected glance. It's unlikely that the case of the Autumn Queen's interrogation will be overturned, Wang Xian analyzed based on his limited historical knowledge. I guess the so-called autumn trial is just a passing act, unless you can establish connections and get a promise from a high-ranking official to retrial. Miss Lin was even more surprised. Although for Ming Dynasty people, this was just a simple inference based on experimentation, Wang Xian's mind was actually convoluted. It's really impressive. But she didn't intend to discuss such matters with him. You can rest assured and recuperate. By October, I will naturally give the money to the big brother of the Wang family. Giving the money to Wang Xian made her really uneasy. After speaking, she stood up and Fuifu said, goodbye. After the matter was over, she had to leave quickly, otherwise she would run into Mrs. Wang and be unable to eat and walk away. But just as Lin Qing'er was about to open the door, she heard a sneer from behind. Innocent. Are you talking about me? Lin Qing'er turned around, frowning slightly. No matter who it was, being looked down upon by someone she despised would not be easy. Is there anyone else? Wang Xian looked at her calmly and said, don't have too high expectations for Qiu Shen, otherwise you will not be able to withstand the blow. What's going on? Lin Qing'er couldn't help but ask. I don't know who you found or what kind of guarantee you gave, Wang Xian said calmly. I only know one thing. If I want to clear the relationship, I will definitely do it unnoticed. He glanced at her and said, like you swaggered to the provincial and capital cities to give gifts, and came back so early to wait for the autumn trial. Even the deaf know what you're doing, and even I, an idiot, know you must have received some kind of promise. Not to mention the Zhao family who overturned the case like flipping pancakes. After a moment's pause, he said word by word, do you think they will try their best to counter it? Miss Lin originally only patiently listened to him out of politeness, but halfway through, she was so frightened that she felt powerless. She quickly sat down and calmed down for a long time before finally saying in horror, how could you think of that? What she actually wants to ask is, are you telling the truth? But I really can't believe that Wang Xian is an idiot who can be smarter than himself. She wondered if someone had taught him to say that. This is just common sense, anyone who rolls around in this world knows this. Wang Xian sighed and said, it's just that you, a young lady who doesn't leave home, can't imagine it. You. Lin Qing'er ignored her anger and asked, how do you think the Zhao family will counter it? When you see the truth, you just crack it. Wang Xian said calmly, for example, spreading the news that the Lin family is bribing a high-ranking official and trying to overturn the case has become well known. Who would you say would still stand up for your family? Lin Qing'er's face turned pale, so shocked that she couldn't say a word. There's even simpler, just notify the original patrol officer who handled the case. Do you think he will risk his life to prevent the case from flipping over? Lin Qing'er was stunned. Yes, if he was under tremendous pressure from both inside and outside, would the old man who promised to overturn the case for him just take a step and quit? Think about the risks of the Zhao family, this is simply certain, so, what should we do? Lin Qing'er's big eyes were filled with tears, biting her colorless lower lip tightly. Can't I lose all my money for justice? Thinking of doing everything she could to make her father, who had died with hatred, she finally couldn't help but lie down on the table and cry bitterly. A woman from Jiangnan, Wu Nong, spoke softly, crying so low and melodious that Wang Xian seemed to enjoy it. The old man outside didn't think so. He forcefully pushed open the door and shouted, girl, what's wrong? Did he bully you? Upon closer inspection, he realized that the two of them were sitting across the square table, not as close to each other as he had imagined. Lin Qing'er ignored him and just cried bitterly, completely losing control of her emotions. 1,000-mile embankment collapsed in a hole, causing a great disaster for Lin Qing'er's family. Her brother committed the death penalty, and her father passed away in anger. At the age of 16, she had to shoulder the heavy burden of the Lin family with her delicate shoulders. In the past 6 months, in the provincial capital and Nanjing, I don't know how many closed doors she has received, and has been subjected to ridicule. She has long been overwhelmed, just relying on one belief to hold on. Now that Wang Xian has broken her beliefs, how can she not collapse? Uncle and Yongle thought that their relationship had gone wrong, and they were secretly surprised. They were so obedient that it was Miss Lin who was so sad. Could it be that she was pursuing a man? Thinking of this, Uncle's gaze towards Wang Xian changed, master. Those who can eat swan meat like toads are truly skilled. After all, Yongle is a girl and cannot bear to see another girl. She was hurt by love like this. But it was impossible for her to comfort Lin Qing'er, so she walked up to Wang Xian and secretly twisted him, whispering, why don't you advise? How can I persuade? Wang Xian didn't know that they had such a brain tease and said with a bitter smile, you're not doing my job again. Are you a man? Uncle immediately roared, startling Miss Lin. He raised his head and said tearfully, Uncle 7, don't do anything about him. Girl, you're still protecting him. Uncle looked sorrowful and angry, and said to himself, even if your family is in trouble, you shouldn't trample on yourself like this. As he shook his bowl-sized fist, he said, kid, do you want to be beaten up? Okay, Wang Xian couldn't figure out which one it was, but the hero didn't take immediate losses. In order to avoid being beaten, he had to say to Lin Qinger, come back and come back again. Let's sum it up and see if there is still a way to survive. Miss Lin had already been knocked unconscious by Wang Xian, and she obediently nodded and said, Only then did she realize that she was crying in front of so many people, feeling very embarrassed. Quickly stop crying, wiping the corners of your eyes while sobbing uncontrollably. Uncle Chi and Yongle admired Wang Xian to the heavens. Uncle Chi sighed inwardly with the thoughts of a passerby, my girl will be eaten to death by him in this lifetime. Hurry up, my mother is coming back. Since Yongle regards Miss Lin as her future sister-in-law, she naturally changed her stance and kindly reminded, even if you want to succeed, you have to slow down the fire, right? Wang Xian nodded and said, the days are still long, it's not urgent at this moment. I'll say goodbye first. Miss Lin stood up and said anxiously, there will be a market in 10 more days next time. It's too long, isn't it? Uncle Chi wished he could find a loophole to get in, girl. Can you keep a little reserved? The day after tomorrow, my mother and my elder brother are going back to the countryside to pay respects to the third uncle. Following my mother's principle of face is worth a few dollars, and affordability is the most important, Yongle decisively became a spy. There's no way, it's easy to catch someone who is willing to follow my brother and is so devoted. No matter what kind of enemy or foe she is, let's take her first. Okay, I'll come back in 3 days. Miss Lin gave her another blessing, put on her Miranda, and said goodbye to Uncle Seven. Leaving the alley where the Wang family was located, Uncle Chi couldn't help but say, Miss, don't let that kid deceive you. He's not a good person. I know, Miss Lin nodded, but this time, he seems different. I didn't see it, Uncle Chi muttered softly. Seeing her restless appearance, he could only sigh inwardly. It seems that the eyes of lovers not only show Shishir, but also Panan. Less than 100 votes short, come on, charge up. Let's add more. Requesting recommended tickets. End of this chapter. Chapter 7. Destiny. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 7 Destiny. After the old lady returned, she saw the 2 bamboo baskets and said strangely, who has come before? Miss Lin. Silver Bell whispered. She. The old lady said angrily, didn't she say that the Lin family is not allowed to step into the house? But she brought mooncakes, grilled meat, and liaodong ginseng, Yongle said as she took out a stack of precious banknotes from her sleeve and said, there are also 10 guan banknotes. It turned out that Miss Lin still brought money, just to guard against Wang Er. The old lady took the money and smacked her lips. Actually, just thinking about it, can't we blame our family? It's her brother's fault. She doesn't have any irreconcilable grudges with us, does it? Yes, yes, yes. Yongle nodded and said repeatedly, Miss Lin has promised 20 guan. She said she's not working well at the moment and will make up for it later. Oh. 30 guan is a large amount. Although the value of the treasure money is depreciating rapidly at the moment, poor families like them have to save for 2 years without any profit or loss. Although the old lady felt hot-headed at the sight of money, she still said with some clarity, why does she want to cover your brother's medical expenses? I know, I know. Silver Bell immediately became excited, looking like a little hag. She leaned over the old lady's shoulder and vividly talked about what she had seen and heard, as well as the part of her brain, oh. Ah. The old lady was amazed while listening, and after listening for a long time, she touched her chin and said, although she has been divorced and her family looks poor, how could she possibly take a liking to your brother? Perhaps my brother has some strengths that we haven't noticed. Yongle's impression of his brother unconsciously changed a lot, and he was able to think of Wang Xian for the better. Is it just that one of them? The old lady punched and hooked her thumbs before realizing that the other person was her daughter. She immediately changed her face and said, "What should I do? What does this mean?" Yongle also imitated her movements and asked naively. The old lady blushed and roared, "If you don't clean the house and expose the tiles for 3 days, and don't get out and cook, will you starve to death?" "Got it." Yongle was so scared that she quickly ran away. 2 days later is the Mid-Autumn Festival, which is the 3 traditional festivals in China. Eating mooncakes during the Mid-Autumn Festival was invented by Emperor Taizu. Now this custom has been deeply rooted in the hearts of people. If anyone doesn't eat a piece of moon cake on Mid-Autumn Festival, it's simply not called Mid-Autumn Festival. With Miss Lin's gift this year, I don't have to worry about where to get a mooncake back. But the old lady only left one, enough for the whole family to share, and the rest was sent to the neighbors by the silver bell. It's not that she suddenly became generous, but that in the past 6 months, her neighbors have really helped a lot. Now that she has Hangzhou mooncakes, she has closed the door and eats alone, even my mother can't do it. Besides, when did my mother suffer losses? Not long after Yongle returned, the neighbors came one after another to give back gifts. You pick up a watermelon, I pick up 2 sections of lotus root, and those generous families even returned a live fish. The 3 siblings saw my mother take out a small basket of mooncakes and exchange them for enough ingredients to hold a Mid-Autumn Festival banquet, and also earned a good reputation along the way. I can't help but admire my every body and soul. This is the wisdom of life. The old lady smirked arrogantly and looked at the piece of preserved meat hanging under the eaves. She calculated whether she would start with meat for every meal and eat it until the winter solstice. Or should we keep it until the 12th lunar month and exchange it with the neighbors for a New Year's Eve dinner? It's really a headache. The next morning, the old lady changed into clean clothes with Wang Gui and rushed to the countryside to congratulate the 3rd uncle of the Wang family on his birthday. As soon as the old lady left, Yongle eagerly waited, even delaying the task of making shoe uppers. Wang Xian was sweating profusely in the courtyard, with a thick copy of the Deming Law in front of him. Although the Wang family was not a scholar, due to his father, they not only had the Deming Law, but also the Gao. However, it is said that the latter is basically no longer needed. To be familiar with the laws of the Deming, just look at the former. He read the Law of the Ming Dynasty not only for the Lin family's case, but also because the various regulations and rules of the Ming Dynasty, including etiquette, household, punishment, officials, and labor, are all included in the Law of the Ming Dynasty. By reading this book thoroughly, one can gain a general understanding of the rules of society, know what they can and cannot do, and what they should do in the future. Although he only watched a part of it, he was able to understand his situation. No wonder Wang Er would dream of going back to the past. Originally, the Ming Dynasty was a strict hierarchical society, and the higher your level, the greater the rights you enjoyed. Conversely, the greater the restrictions you faced. I am now the son of a criminal official, only slightly higher than the common people. Unable to take the imperial examination, unable to become an official, and even unable to engage in business, because leaving Fuyang County requires going to the government to lead the way, and they simply do not offer it to him. In this era where blood ties are above all else, because his father is a criminal, he can only sit in a state of distress for a lifetime, unable to relax. In the eyes of future generations, the unbreakable rules and regulations are heavy shackles that wrap around him, making him unable to move. He has been thinking repeatedly these days about how to go in the future, but in the end, he realized that he had no way to go if you don't want to continue living as a thug like before. I can only work tirelessly like my elder brother, working tirelessly for others and earning only a few tens of one every day. Once you are sick or injured, you lose your income and have to pay for medical treatment yourself. Or we have to ignore Wang Fa and take some boats to the middle of the river and ask the guests whether they want to eat hob noodles or wonton noodles. Both options were so bitter that he had the same daydream as Wang Er. How good would it be if he could overturn the case for his father? Thinking of this, he couldn't help but smirk inwardly. It turned out that Wang Er's self-abandonment was also pitiful. "Brother, do you still have the heart to laugh?" Silver Bell pouted, "When is it now? Your sister Lin is afraid she won't be scared." Wang Xian regained his senses and smiled, saying, "When it's time to come, it will naturally come." "Brother, you've really changed." Yongle looked at him for a while and said seriously, "You look like an old man now." Wang Xian's silent bitter smile, "How should I explain it to her?" "Let's never explain it again. Once upon a time, you used to babble all day and argue with me whenever you had nothing to do," the little girl said with a hint of sadness. "After getting better, I've never seen you take the initiative to talk, let alone argue." "Just say it, I'll listen to it," Wang Xian smiled. "Besides, you're so sensible, can't I argue with you?" "Ah, it's actually good to argue occasionally. It's truly my mother's daughter, who has such a strong desire to fight." "Hee hee." Wang Xian smiled and ignored her, focusing on exercising his legs. Until late afternoon, there was finally a knock on the door, and the silver bell jumped 3 feet high. She quickly went to open the door, and it was indeed Lin Qinger wearing a power luo, followed by her old family member, Uncle 7. "Sorry, there's something at home today and I just left." Lin Qinger apologized to Yongle after picking off the mirror. Today she is still wearing a plain dress, her face pale, her lips completely devoid of blood, and she looks sickly, which is very regrettable. "Are you sick?" Yongle welcomed her in and asked with concern, "Why is your face so pale?" "It's okay," Lin Qinger shook her head and smiled. In fact, her behavior is closely related to Wang Xian. If it weren't for this scumbag destroying her hope, Miss Lin could still hold on with a burst of passion until the string broke. These days, she seems to have lost her soul. Last night, she and her mother spent the Mid-Autumn Festival together. Considering that her brother in the death row did not close his eyes, this is not the August 15th reunion day, but the July 15th Zhongyuan Festival. Miss Lin's sadness flowed upstream into a river, and she finally fell ill overnight. She woke up this morning feeling dizzy, bloated, and powerless, and didn't want to go out at all. Besides, she calmed down when she went back and didn't even believe that Wang Er could help her. "It was only out of credit that I dragged my sick body forward." Yongle let her in, and the old lady cleaned the western room spotless this morning, even her most cherished spider web was not spared. And a pot of chrysanthemums was also placed. It seems to have been stolen from the entrance of the county government office, according to Yongle. Unfortunately, Miss Lin was so preoccupied that she didn't even take a glance. The wise mother of the first generation has even miscalculated at times. Wang Xian was curious. Why did my mother suddenly become so good and even decorate his room, but she had her own arrangements? How dare he ask more questions? The two still sat down across the square table, except for an extra pot of chrysanthemums in the middle. Wang Xian carefully flipped through the case records brought by Miss Lin. He has made up his mind to give it his all, even if there is a glimmer of hope to overturn this case. Through the file, he finally saw the full picture of the case. Its beginning was an ordinary case of missing persons. At that time, the stepmother Zhao of Lin Rongxing, the eldest son of the Lin family, went missing. Zhao's father sued the county and accused his son-in-law of killing his daughter. Chen, supervisor of the county, didn't believe this at that time, because the Lins were both the richest and the most virtuous in the county. When the county built bridges and roads, and built the county school granary, it gave great support to the supervisor of the county. In addition, Lin Rongxing is also a student of the county school. He is good at both learning and character, and has a good reputation. Chen, supervisor of the county, must certainly do his best to protect the Lin family. So Chen, supervisor of the county, refused to hear the case for the reason of living to see a person, dying to see a corpse, but ordered the two families to search for the Zhao family with all their strength. The county also sent people to look for it, and even sent a letter to Lin Xian for help. 2 months later, the land conservation report from Lingqiao town in our county revealed the discovery of a female corpse on the riverbank. Now it is a peaceful time, and a murder case has occurred in the county, which is an incredible event. Chen, supervisor of the county, immediately linked the female corpse with the missing Zhao family and ordered Wang Xingye, the head of the torture chamber. That is, Wang Xian's father, to take the grave work with him to the scene and notify his family to recognize the corpse. As soon as they arrived at the scene, the Zhao family recognized him as the Zhao family, and they cried uncontrollably. But Lin Xiaocai vehemently denied it, believing that although the woman was bitten by a wild dog, she could still see a difference from her wife. After the final autopsy by the coroner, it was determined that although the female corpse was of similar age to Zhao, she died within 7 days, while Zhao had been missing for 2 months, so naturally she was not the same person. At that time, the Zhao family was constantly clamoring and being suppressed by officials. At last, Chen, supervisor of the county, accepted the verdict of the grave work, dealt with the female corpse separately, and ordered the 2 families to continue searching for the Zhao family. Just at this time, the Western Zhejiang Patrol came to the county to inspect the justice and release carts to receive complaints. The Zhao family made a flagrant appeal. This time, they not only sued the Lin family, but also sued Chen, supervisor of the county, and Wang Xingye together, accusing them of taking bribes, bending the law, shielding wealthy families, and fabricating the autopsy results. Additional updates will be delivered, and there will be another update in the evening. Everyone has tickets to support it. New books and new stations, if you want to stand firm, it all depends on everyone's support. End of this chapter. Chapter 8. There is only one truth. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 8. There is only one truth. The Ming dynasty basically followed the division of the Yuan dynasty, but the power of each province was divided into 3 branches. The Xuanbu political commissioner, the administrative commissioner, the judicial commissioner, and the commander-in-chief. The 3 powers were separated to serve as checks and balances. Under the Department of Punishments and Prosecutors, there are also sub-patrols to supervise administration and justice, all of which are held by deputy inspectors or officials of the Department of Prosecutors. Zhejiang is divided into Zhejiang East Road and Zhejiang West Road, with Hangzhou Prefecture under the jurisdiction of Zhejiang West Road. He observed the Zhejiang West Patrol and attached great importance to the control of the Zhao family, as it was not only a homicide case, but also a bribery and embezzlement bill for county officials. This is definitely a major case in Zhejiang province. So he immediately called for another autopsy according to the inspector's work, and the result was very different. According to the inspector's work, the scene was surveyed and the autopsy was conducted, and it was determined that the female corpse had been dead for several months, only to be tied to a stone and sunk to the bottom of the river. Later, the rope fell off and finally floated to the surface of the water. Therefore, it doesn't look like it has passed away for so long. Seeing that the autopsy results in Fuyang County were overturned, he observed the balance in his heart and naturally leaned towards the plaintiff. He looked suspiciously at a cadre in Fuyang County, ordered Chen, supervisor of the county, to suspend his post for investigation, and then interrogated Lin Rongxing in person. Lin Rongxing spoke confidently in front of He Jiankan, denying that he had killed his wife. But through questioning witnesses, he observed that he had a record of assaulting his wife. Lin Rongxing said that his original wife passed away due to difficult childbirth, and later continued to play the role of the Zhao family. But Zhao is a fickle person who often flirts with his classmates, which makes him very embarrassed. Sometimes when the 2 of them argue, they have also used their hands. Zhao's disappearance this time was on their way back to their mother's house after a fight. How could an accident happen if your 2 families are less than 10 miles apart, and the Zhao family goes out in broad daylight, exclaimed He Guanding angrily. It's clear that after you killed someone, you lied and claimed that she went back to her mother's house. Lin Rongxing repeatedly said he didn't know, because he had a scholar and fame, how could he observe and not be punished? On the Zhao family memorial, there is a witness named Hu Sankai, who is a classmate of Lin Rongxing. He immediately summoned him to the hall for questioning, and whose San Kai exposed that when we were drinking together, he had heard Lin Rongxing complain several times that Zhao did not follow the rules of women, and he wished he could kill her. What observation has determined that Lin Rongxing is a murderer? He went to write a letter to study Taoism, took away his talent and fame, and then served him with severe punishment. Although Lin Rongxing's bones were hard, after tasting 18 types of torture tools, he still resorted to forced punishment and admitted that he was at odds with the Zhao family. He deceived her to the riverbank and killed her, then tied her to a stone and sank to the bottom of the river later. Lin Rongxing identified the location where the blood clothes and murder weapons were buried. Upon inspection, he found a blood-stained dress and a whistle. Seeing that the gap had finally been opened, He Jian was overjoyed and ordered Lin Rongxing, who was on the brink of death, to be suppressed. He then interrogated Zhou Wuzhua. At first, Zhou Wuzhua insisted that he did not receive any money, and even if there were errors in the survey, it was just that he was not proficient in his studies. Ask Wang Xingye, the scribe of the prison, the same answer. The statement made by Wuzhua is reasonable. Even if the result is incorrect, he is just derelict of duty. At most, he will not be used in the reform, but he will not be sued. However, he observation failed to cross-examine Lin Rongxing, and then turned to bring Lin Rongxing up for trial. Lin Rongxing was defeated, so he naturally had something to offer. He admitted that he bribed Chen, supervisor of the county, 100 banknotes, which was handed over by Wang Xingye, the head of the torture chamber. After receiving Lin Rongxing's confession, He Guanguan once again brought the Shuli of Fuyang County to trial. This time, he learned to be clever and put Wang Xingye, who was as slippery as oil, behind. He first brought Zhou Wuzhua to trial. Sure enough, when Zhou Wuzhua saw the confession, he admitted that he had received 10 guan of money for his hard work, which was given by the Wang official. Upon receiving the confession from Zhou Wuzhua, He Jian was overjoyed and immediately brought to trial Wang Sili. In the lobby, the official Wang couldn't help but laugh and cry, saying that the bookworm didn't eat the smoke and fire of the world, and that the people in the yamen all drank the wind from the west and north. The county master is certainly as honest as water, but once he goes out, the sedan bearers who carry sedan chairs below, the 3 groups of yamen attendants accompanying him, as well as the white servants and the common people, add up to dozens of people. They have no income or only a little work, food, and silver, which is not enough to support their family. Relying solely on this kind of job to earn some hard-earned money and spend money. For example, when going to Lingqiao town, the victim is required to pay for their shoes and feet as usual. Because 10 miles away, an additional 30 cents and 20 cents for wine and food will be added. Then the body is transported to the charity village for autopsy, and all of this must be done by the victim, and the government has no obligation to do so. So asking him for 100 guan of fees is just a common practice throughout history, not a request for bribes. Although the words may not sound pleasant, that's the truth. Whoever changes their position in Wang Xingye must do so. Besides, this kind of thing cannot be reversed by just a small official. Unexpectedly, the observation book was full of dullness, and it was determined that this was bribery. Then he forced Qin County magistrate to accept bribes. Wang Xingye insisted that everything was the work of the people below, and the supervisor of the county did not know anything. He observed that in order to pry Wang Xingye out of his mouth, he was executed again, but he did not know whether it was a hard bone or whether the yamen runner released water. In a word, Wang Xingye survived the execution and refused to admit that Qin supervisor of the county had something to do with him. He observed that he had no choice but to stop pursuing, but this was enough for Qin supervisor of the county to drink. After turning this case into an ironclad case, report the case on patrol. Because it is a major case of human life and corruption involving officials, the inspectorate is required to report to the Ministry of Justice, which will be approved by the emperor and then issued back at different levels in order to comply with the law. During this period, the Lin family objected and sued in the provincial capital. The case went back and forth for more than a year. Until last winter, the judgment finally came down. Although Chen's supervisor of the county had no corruption, the imperial court was lax and ignorant, so he was dismissed from his post and taken to rest. Lin Rongxing was sentenced to be executed as the Marquis of the imperial household, and Wang Xingye was punished with 100 cane for fraud and sent to the salt field to serve 5 years of hard labor. As for Zhou Wuzhua, he was punished with a staff of 200 for dereliction of duty and exiled 3,000 miles. Later, due to his severe injuries, he died in prison, although it is not the Hongwu period when he was greedy for 20 taels of ink and was about to peel off his skin. The criminal law is still severe and particularly harsh. Wang Xingye's fate is definitely a light sentence. After Wang Xian finished reading, he found that Lin Qing'er was already leaning against the table and supporting himself to sleep. This girl is weak like a small blade of grass, yet resilient and heartbreaking. Although he is not a person who cherishes fragrance and jade, he still admires Miss Lin very much. Although the girl looked extremely tired, Wang Xian couldn't sit with her and could only cough lightly. Lin Qing'er suddenly woke up and rubbed her blushing cheeks, shyly saying, "Have you finished reading?" Wang Xian nodded. "How's it going?" Lin Qing'er asked with a hint of luck. From a procedural perspective, it has already been turned into an iron case, Wang Xian said slowly. "If you only look at the final report submitted, even I believe that your brother is the murderer." "Absolutely not." Lin Qing'er cut off the railway with her nails. "Do you know where that so-called physical evidence comes from?" "Where did it come from?" "It was the prison guard who kindly reminded my brother that he couldn't remember where the murder weapon was buried, so it was better to bury it again," Lin Qing'er said with a strong mockery on her face. "My brother asked someone to bring a message home, so my mother and I found my sister.in law to wear a dress. My mother pierced her arm again, turned it into a bloody garment, and then found a whistle to bury it under the crooked neck tree at the village head. Then she informed my brother that he had to confess. So, is the physical evidence fake?" "Of course it's fake," Lin Qing'er gritted her teeth and said, "because my brother was unjustly accused, he didn't even kill anyone." "Oh." Also, Lin Qing'er told Wang Xian about what she heard on the boat last time. "If they don't have ghosts in their hearts, they're still afraid that you might not. Go stop and report it." She looked at Wang Xian and said, "Are what they said true?" Wang Xian nodded and said, "It should be like this. Among my fox friends and dog friends, there is a man named Liao San. His brother specializes in handling lawsuits and writing lawsuits for others. I asked Liao San to ask his brother to help me write a lawsuit, but before he could get it, he was beaten. After a moment, he thought carefully and said, it should be a letter from his brother, which was later passed on by Liao San. So, my brother must have been wronged." Lin Qing'er emphasized. "It's no use telling me," Wang Xian said calmly. "We need to make the government believe that this case can be overturned." "How can the government believe it? You say?" Wang Xian thought for a moment before suddenly lowering his voice and pausing word by word, "Will your sister.in-law still be alive?" "How could?" Lin Qing'er didn't believe it. Even if the female corpse is not her sister.in-law, she has been missing for over 2 years. How could she still be alive? "I think it's highly possible." Wang Xian opened the file and found one page, saying, "Look at the autopsy section in Lingqiao town. It's very clear. This female corpse has been soaked in water for a long time and has deformed, and a wild dog has torn the corpse apart. How could the Zhao family recognize it at a glance? It's their daughter. Even if they can barely recognize it, it is common for people to not accept the fact that their loved ones have passed away until the last moment. At that time, even the body was not tested, and the Zhao family was in a hurry to mourn." After a pause, Wang Xian continued, "So there are only 2 possibilities. If they had known earlier, this body belonged to your sister.in-law, or if they had known earlier, this body was not your sister.in-law. If it were the former, they would definitely know who killed your sister. In law and intended to cover up for him. But if that's the case, they should hope that it will go away and never sue later, so the former cannot be established. In later times, the logical reasoning was nothing, but it impressed Miss Lin deeply. After careful consideration, she realized that it was indeed the case. She immediately stood in awe and said, "You are really amazing." After speaking, it was difficult to put aside a channel. "I never thought that this could come out of your mouth. After 3 days of farewell, let's take a fresh look." Wang Xian said calmly, "So the truth is only one. They know that the female corpse is not your sister. In law. And she must not have died." He lightly patted the table and said, "Find her, and this case will be turned over." Dizzy, I wrote Lin Rongxing as Lin Wanrong. Lin Sangu really has a strong aura. End of this chapter. Chapter 9. Black Hands. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 9 Black Hands. But even if the Zhao family knows that my sister. In law is not dead, they should calm down. Miss Lin pondered for a moment and said, "Why are you so focused on making the case bigger? Either they have a deep grudge against your Lin family," Wang Xian said in a deep voice, "or they are helping someone alleviate the disaster. How can I say that I was originally from my own family? At most I just stumbled and didn't want to die or live." Lin Qing'er thought for a moment and suddenly said, "Are you saying that they are helping the killer of the female corpse clear the disaster?" Wang Xian nodded and said, "I had an impression of this case before, but now I have looked at it and finally realized that something is wrong. The Zhao family's behavior is too abnormal, completely detrimental to others and self-interest. There should be someone behind the scenes who instigated or even coerced them, constantly biting the Lin family and not letting go. This person is very likely the murderer of that female corpse." Wang Xian closed the file and said in a deep voice, "I remember my father had already put aside your sister. In law's disappearance case before he Guan came to Fuyang, and was working hard to investigate the anonymous female corpse case." In Wang Er's memory, Chen's supervisor of the county really hoped to solve the case before the arrival of the observation envoy, so as to avoid being found out. He ordered his father to lead Constable Hu up the riverbank where the female corpse was found, conducting village-by-village investigations. At that time, the supervisor of the county was very urgent. On the 3rd or 5th day, the board was hit on the old man's butt, so Wang Er remembered it clearly. "You mean that the murderer encouraged the Zhao family to sue Chen's supervisor of the county together when he saw that the story was going to be revealed?" Miss Lin said strangely, "The Zhao family would be so stupid. Although the civilian prosecutor didn't need to eat the board in the early Ming dynasty, once he failed to sue, would you still work in the county in the future? Even if it's done, what will the other officials do to you? What will the succeeding county magistrate think of you?" In fact, although the Zhao family won the lawsuit, the past 2 years have not been easy. They have not been favored by the newly appointed county magistrate, and the subordinates have also shared the most difficult tasks with his family. Nowadays, the Zhao family is living a disheveled life, half dead. This is not a problem. The people behind the scenes must have a way to coerce the Zhao family and make them have to comply. Wang Xian thought for a moment and said coldly, he thought he could hide behind the scenes without being aware of anything, but he didn't know that if he kept stirring up trouble for a long time, he would always show his horse's feet. After listening to Wang Xian's meticulous deduction, Miss Lin moved her lips but held back from speaking. Unexpectedly, Wang Xian seemed to be able to understand her thoughts and sneered, "If you report now and say that your sister. In law hasn't died, this case will be completely hopeless." "Why?" Miss Lin was surprised, as she clearly thought so. The person behind the scenes is ruthless, cunning, and familiar with the Zhejiang officialdom. His energy is beyond imagination. Wang Xian said in a deep voice, "So once you tell the government, he will soon know that you will definitely kill people, destroy bodies, and exterminate everything. There will be no evidence of death, and nothing will happen. How do you know he's familiar with the officialdom?" Miss Lin's head was already in a pulp, and she couldn't believe that Wang Xian, relying on a file, could infer so many facts as if he had seen them firsthand. There is a saying that stay on the front line and meet in the future, especially in officialdom. How can you observe Fuyang County and use a needle nose as a mallet? You are always ready to fight against three evils. Especially when you punish my father, you must drag Chen, supervisor of the county, into the water. If there is no revenge, who will believe it? Wang Xian said calmly. If you don't firmly believe this, how dare the Zhao family take such a big offense? Lin Qing'er nodded, confirming his guess. When she was still dredging up relations in the provincial capital, she heard from several officials that Chen, supervisor of the county's father, Chen Ying, the famous Yongle powerful minister, was the reason why the case was so protracted. At the beginning of this year, Chen Ying was imprisoned and sentenced to death, and the verdict was finally issued. And the reason why He Guan dared to take action against Chen Ying's son 2 years ago, when Chen Ying was in high power. It's because when Chen Ying was handling a large-scale rebellion case, he executed the father and brother of He Guan, and even He Guan almost lost his life. Later, it was proven to be unjust, and he was reinstated to his original position. However, he did not observe that he hated Chen Ying to death from then on. Even if Chen Ying had immense power at that time, he would take the opportunity to kill his son. In this way, we can explain why my father would protect Chen, supervisor of the county. He must know who Chen, supervisor of the county's father is. If he dares to drag Chen Ying's son into the water, he will surely die. It's better to expect Chen, supervisor of the county, to pull himself out after he gets through the difficulties. If it were himself, Wang Xian would also make the same choice. But people have no front or back eyes. Who could have known at that time that Chen, who was on the rise, was imprisoned and sentenced to death within 2 years? So, what should I do? Miss Lin herself realized, why do I keep using this phrase? I found your sister. In law unnoticed by the gods and ghosts. Wang Xian lowered his eyelids and said, there is no other way. Miss Lin thought she had some good idea after listening to his analysis, and couldn't help but shake her head and say, my family has been looking for her for 2 years, and I've been looking for her, but I haven't heard from her at all. The autumn decision is approaching, and the Zhao family needs to be even more careful in their actions. If your sister. Law is still alive, she shouldn't be in the Zhao family, Wang Xian said in a deep voice. Since the Zhao family knows it's a false accusation and the case is getting bigger and bigger, and the family is full of people with mixed opinions, they definitely wouldn't dare to hide her at home. After a pause, he said with uncertainty, she's very likely in the hands of those behind the scenes. So, now we should first find out the person behind the scenes. Lin Qing'er's eyes lit up. Wang Xian nodded and said, it's much easier than finding your sister. Law. We can work together to keep an eye on the Zhao family. On the one hand, we can keep an eye on them. As the autumn finale approaches, they will know your actions and definitely discuss countermeasures. Let's take a look at what kind of guests the Zhao family has these days, and where the Zhao family members will visit. On the other hand, the person behind the scenes is the perpetrator of the unnamed female corpse case. My father probably knows it well, at least he's already very close to the truth. My father's salt farm is 100 miles away, but I want to go see him. It would be great if I could get some help from him. But your body. Lin Qing'er was quite moved, but seeing Wang Xian walking with a crutch, she couldn't bear it anymore. I heard there is a type of transportation called a sliding pole. Wang Xian looked at her and said, besides, most of the journey is still by boat. That's okay, Lin Qing'er nodded and said, then I'll work hard for you. Without delay, the two agreed to depart in 3 days. The reason for the delay was that although the salt field was not a prison, it was also heavily guarded, and visitors were not allowed to enter. There was a reason to visit. Wang Xian unconsciously adhered to his mother's spirit of benefiting others more than oneself and said to Miss Lin, "Our excuse for visiting is to send winter clothes." The task of preparing winter clothes naturally falls on Lin Qing'er. Miss Lin has long been accustomed to extortion from him and doesn't want to agree at all. Having finished speaking, Miss Lin stood up to bid farewell. When she pushed the door open, she found that it had already been a while outside. In the courtyard, Yinling and Qishu have already had lunch. The little girl Yinling naturally didn't cook for Uncle Qi, but kept crying out for food. She looked childish and beautiful, which made Uncle love so much. She bought roast chicken and xiaobing, baked cake and griddle, in the street and invited her to eat them. After finishing the meal and not seeing Miss Lin come out, Uncle Seven's heart darkened. It's over now, Miss must have become a daughter. Law. When they saw Lin Qing'er come out, they saw that her complexion had improved, her eyes had brightened, and her lips had turned red. Thinking about her appearance before entering, Yinling exclaimed in surprise, "Sister Lin, how did my brother cure you?" "Your brother?" Lin Qing'er smiled and pulled her hand, "He's really amazing." "Scared?" Yinling said incredulously, "It's really fake." "I couldn't see it before," Lin Qing'er nodded with a smile. "This time I experienced it firsthand." Upon hearing this, Uncle Qi almost fainted and exclaimed in his heart, I'm hopeless, I'm completely hopeless." Feeling a little better, Lin Qing'er and Yinling said a few homely greetings before bidding farewell. After she left Niue Alley with the accompaniment of Uncle Qi, wearing a mi-luo, the courtyard door next to the Wang family slowly opened, revealing the faces of two middle-aged women. One is Aunt Zhang, the owner of this family, and the other is actually Mrs. Wang Xian. The old lady who was supposed to go to the countryside for a banquet actually ambushed at the neighbor's house. The two of them looked at the alley entrance and saw that there were no more people left. The old lady turned around and sneered at Aunt Zhang, "Are you a trustworthy monkey?" Aunt Zhang is very thin, with a slightly pointed mouth and shaved cheeks, hence the nickname. "I believe it, it's really a girl from the Lin family. Although she's wearing a mask, that's her senior worker Tian Qi next to her," he said with a forced expression, "Humph." The old lady sneered proudly, "Believe it now. Although my son doesn't know anything about it, he still has a knack for chasing girls." She exclaimed in her heart, "When he told me he wanted to marry the Lin family girl back, I even laughed at his delusions. If he couldn't think of this kid, he really did what he said." However, Aunt Zhang accepted the reality and immediately ate the carrot lightly, feeling worried. It's hard to guarantee that there will be any rumors or gossip circulating between the two dolls in private. You still have to take care of it. No matter. The old lady crossed her hips and said, "We can sit up straight. They like to talk about it." She made a good decision. Where did she go to give the dowry at home? Besides, the other party is still an enemy. It's better to pretend not to know and let them continue to develop, wait for the raw rice to cook and then make a calculation. Pooh. Aunt Zhang spat, "Wang Heir has been lying for half a year, and you forget who he is." Alas, that's because he was young and immature. As he grew up, he improved. Although my mother has strong combat power, whenever others talk to Wang Heir, she feels guilty and shortens her breath. I hope so. Aunt Zhang paused, but before she could finish speaking, she saw a young man with a round face swaying past the door. The Zhang family was the second to last family in the alley, and further inside, there was only the Wang family. These brats, how dare you come and find him? The old lady was furious and rolled up her sleeves as she was about to go out, but Aunt Zhang grabbed her tightly and said, "You should be sitting at the Wangjia village banquet now. If you show up now, won't you reveal your true identity?" Purple Hairpin Hate's Journey to the Immortal is very beautiful. Have you watched it? End of this chapter. Chapter 10. On the Wupeng Ship. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 10. On the Wupeng Ship. After seeing Lin Qing'er off, Yinling took out two xiaobing, baked cake and griddle, and half of the roast chicken from the bamboo basket for Wang Xian's lunch. Wang Xian took a xiaobing, baked cake and griddle, and took a bite. It was crispy and full of fragrance. He couldn't help praising it. It turns out that there are also delicious food in this era. That's because there are so many delicious foods in the world, you can eat them without any duplicates for a lifetime. Yongle smiled and said, "You just need to have money to be able to afford them." He supported himself with his hands and drooled longingly, "I really want to eat them all." Before he could finish speaking, he heard a smile at the entrance of the courtyard and said, "It smells so fragrant." The siblings turned around and saw a young man wearing a chestnut silk scarf, green pleats, and a delicate and cunning face. They reached in and smiled at Wang Xian, saying, "Brother, how are you?" Before Wang Xian could speak, Yongling's face immediately changed. She picked up the broom standing in the corner and shouted at the young man, "Handsome grasshopper, how dare you come?" Then she waved her broom to fight. Shui Grasshopper is naturally a nickname. This kid's surname is Shui Minghui, and his movements are very agile. He dodged the Silver Bell's broom like a grasshopper and dodged to Wang Xian's side. With a shy face, he smiled and said, "The visitor is a guest. Miss, you don't serve tea, but you treat me to a broom. Isn't that appropriate? Get out of my house." Yongle widened her eyes and said angrily, "Brother, you have to take care of your sister," Shui Hui said to Wang Xian with a playful smile. "If I were quick-witted, I would have beaten you up long ago." Wang Xian snorted coldly, "You still have the face to come see me." This handsome Hui was originally Wang Er's close friend. He and Wang Xian came out of the gambling house together that day, but after Wang Xian was put in a sack, this kid fled without any sense of loyalty. "Brother, you know me." Shui Hui smiled awkwardly and said, 5 or 6 of them are all burly men. Even if I have thin arms and legs, I will stay and accompany you to be beaten. Based on the principle of minimizing losses, I made a quick decision and went to call someone to help. "Second brother, didn't you say you want to reform and start anew in the future?" Seeing the two of them grinding their heads together, Yongle urgently said, "Don't have any dealings with these unscrupulous people." "Sister, go ahead first and I'll talk to him for a few words," Wang Xianchao smiled at his sister. "It's just a moment." "Humph." Yongle glared fiercely at Wang Xian and angrily returned to the room. She truly deserves to be Mrs. Wang's daughter, fierce. As Yongle left, Shui Hui sat down next to Wang Xian and said, "Brother, I heard you're doing well. Come and take a look, you've missed me so much in the past 6 months." "You're thinking of eating and drinking for free," Wang Xian sneered. "Brother, look at what you're saying, we still have feelings." "Stop it," Wang Xian raised his hand and said, "I have something to do. Can you help me with it?" "Brother, you say it." Shui Hui saw that Wang Xian seemed really angry, so he took it seriously. "Do you remember what those people who hit me looked like?" "I remember." Shui Hui thought for a moment and said, "There are a total of 6, each with big arms and round waist, and they look very familiar. Anyway, they're not from our county, otherwise I wouldn't recognize none of them." He looked at Wang Xian and said, "Brother, you don't want to seek revenge from them, do you? They almost killed me. If you don't avenge me, I swear I won't be a person." Wang Xian said in a resentful voice, "You go to Zhao family village and keep an eye on me. If you see them, come and report it." "Well, no problem, that's our strength," Shui Hui said while scratching his cheeks and helping to laugh. "But based on the principle of acting within our means, let's treat them like farts and let them go." Wang Xian didn't want to talk nonsense to him and raised his hand to stop, saying, "After everything is done, I'll give you 2 fists of money." "How many are new?" Shui Hui immediately stopped persuading, but he wasn't too impatient either. Due to the severe depreciation of Ming Dynasty banknotes nowadays, the value of old banknotes is even less than 10% of their face value. However, the newer the banknotes, the more valuable they are. Brand new banknotes have always been worth 400 copper coins. Wang Xian didn't waste any time either. He took out a stack of brand new treasure coins from his arms, counted out 501, and handed them to him, saying, "This is the advance payment for your work and food expenses." Before Miss Lin left today, she gave Wang Xian 5 guan coins as funds for surveillance. To engage in such activities of keeping an eye on the wind, Wang Er's fox friends and dog friends are many times more professional than the long-term workers of the Lin family. This is 200 copper coins, Shui Hui's mouth watering. Busy and eager to grab it, he looked at it again and again, then carefully received it in his arms and swallowed his saliva, asking, also, the usual 501, "Is it like this?" Wang Xian nodded. "You see, okay." Shui Hui wiped his saliva and, without further ado, rushed out in a flash. In the next 2 days, Yinling ignored Wang Xian with anger, and the family's gaze at him also changed to the same. Wang Xian knew that his illness was not yet cured, but he also had contact with his friends and even generously gave money, which completely disappointed his family. But he doesn't want to explain anything. Firstly, it worries his family, and secondly, he's afraid that his mother won't let him go out. Let time explain everything. Fortunately, the more he did this, the more my mother opened the door to his and Miss Lin's affairs. She wished they could get married tomorrow, so that she could kick this unrepentant bastard and give his wife a headache. After being looked down upon by his family for 2 days, he finally survived until the 3rd day when someone knocked on his door early in the morning and said, "Is this Wang's house?" As soon as the old lady opened the door, she saw 2 sedan bearers carrying an empty sliding pole, saying they were here to pick up Wang Xiaoge and go to the dock. The so-called sliding pole refers to a chair tied to 2 bamboo poles, which is the simplest version of a sedan chair. Without saying a word, the old lady stood aside with Wang Gui and led Wang Xian out. "Mom, what do you want to bring to Dad?" Wang Xian asked. "Let him die early, don't delay my mother's remarriage." The mother exclaimed angrily when she mentioned her father. Scared, the 2 sedan bearers quickly carried Wang Xian and ran out of the alley. The neighbors poked their heads out one after another, watching Wang Xian leave on the sliding pole. Aunt Zhang exclaimed loudly, "This is Miss Lin from the Lin family taking the waiter to go boating. It is said that she will only come back later." "TSK TSK." The neighbors exclaimed, "Strange things happen every year, especially this year. Is it because of the legend that men are not bad and women do not love them?" Wang Xian didn't hear those idle words. He was already sitting on the slide and on the street in Fuyang County. This is still his first time going out on the street after waking up. Although all the shops in the market are what I remember, only by witnessing the eaves and corridors on both sides of the street, the signboards of those shops, the people walking back and forth on the street, and the various north-south goods being sold with burdens. Can I have a vivid perception of the Ming dynasty in which I lived? The sedan bearers were puzzled by the charm, and in the blink of an eye, they sent him to the dock, where they saw Uncle 7 waiting long ago. Uncle Chi paid the money, sent the sedan chair driver away, and then carried Wang Xian on his back to a covered boat. As he walked, he whispered a warning, "Kid, if you dare to betray my girl, I'll kill you, Tianqi." Wang Xianxin said that this is not the same, but how to explain this kind of thing? "I guess if I say, you misunderstood, he will throw me directly into the river." Silently, he boarded the ship and threw Wang Xian into the cabin. Tianqi then transformed into a boatman and shook the boat away from the dock. Tianqi only focused on relieving his anger and threw Wang Xian into the matter. Unexpectedly, Lin Qing'er heard the commotion and was about to lift the curtain to greet her when she saw a black figure fall in. With a coquettish cry, she was thrown to the ground by Wang Xian, groaned again, and was firmly pressed down by Wang Xianjie. Lin Qing'er was immediately confused. Her icy and pure body had never had such intimate contact with a man before. Wang Xian was clear-headed, with Miss Lin's soft and delicate body as a cushion, and he didn't fall at all. He also realized that their current posture was too impolite to the girl's family, and wanted to quickly straighten up. But the strength of his hands was not enough to support his body. Wang Xian's body got up 3 inches and then fell down again. Oh! Lin Qing'er just breathed a sigh of relief and was pressed down hard again. Tears immediately came down her face, and she didn't know if she was embarrassed or pressed down. "Can you help me?" Wang Xian didn't want to be thrown into the river by Tian Qi to feed Wang Ba, so he had to get up quickly. Lin Qing'er's jade face burned with rosy clouds, tears rolling down her face. She bit her rosy lower lip and sobbed, while pushing him hard. Wang Xian then exerted all his strength and finally flipped over, landing beside her. At this moment, Tianqi lifted the curtain and said, "Mississippi." However, he saw the two of them lying side by side in the cabin. He quickly covered his eyes and retreated out. The air inside the cabin was extremely awkward. Miss Lin held her arms and turned to the cabin wall, causing her shoulders to twitch and cry. Wang Xian sat up with great effort and glanced at Miss Lin, who was feeling sad. He didn't know how to comfort her, so he took out a book from his pocket. When he saw the focus, he kept making sounds. Miss Lin couldn't wait for him to apologize, so she naturally became even more depressed. But on second thought, could she still expect a scoundrel to compensate? She wiped away her tears and sat up with grievances. Without the face to go out and see the uncle, he had to sit opposite Wang Xian with both hands on his knees. At this moment, she fixed her gaze on the book in his hand and couldn't help but freeze. I thought it was some kind of erotic legend, but to my surprise, it was actually a copy of Hong Wu Yun. There are not many books in Wang Xian's family, except for a few legal books, which are the Han Wu Yun used by his father as a dictionary. He wants to learn both traditional Chinese characters and Mandarin. In the future, no matter what you do, you must be able to speak Mandarin. Wang Xian seems to be studying pronunciation very seriously, his mouth opening and closing like a fish, but it looks very comical. Lin Qing'er stretched for a while, but couldn't help but burst out laughing. Wang Xian looked up in confusion and asked, "Why, am I pronouncing correctly?" "Of course not. Lin Qing'er has been constantly being taught a lesson by this guy lately, making herself look like an idiot." Seizing the opportunity now, he sternly scolded, "There are too many authors of Hong Wu Yun, and as a result, he made up a mess of 4 different things. You can't learn Mandarin with this book, you can only learn a few strange words. You have to read Yun Hui Ding Zheng, not Hong Wu Yun. Ah! Wang Xian was so shocked that his mouth opened wide, and his emotions were in vain. "Well, it's for nothing," Lin Qing'er nodded and said happily. Seeking recommendation, seeking collection. End of this chapter.